General family viewing.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes, what has happened?
Wow, that's essentially what happens in an emergency situation. What you might not know is that there are private firms and institutions, companies who give these services. This week on The Grind, we're going to be concentrating on this. We need to know what exactly happens in these situations, what happens in these vehicles, and how exactly you can make a business out of it. We already have Godfrey who's going to be explaining that to us just now. Godfrey, if I could just come into this vehicle so we can have a casual conversation. We need to see what happens in here, essentially. Of course, Godfrey, there are things that you do first. Yes. What are the first things you do when you do get to a casualty on site?
Now, once the casualty is stabilized, we check in the mode of injury, what it could be. Like now, our casualty at the moment, she sustained some head injury. We have some bruises. Be sure that because she lost some bit of some blood, that the pressure have not spiked up.
So as you do that, yes, the casualty will be strapped in very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
A person would want to know, how exactly did you get, the information? How did you get to this casualty? Where do you get the information from?
Now, we have a number. So someone called our dispatch center. And then from the dispatch, where we were actually on standby, we were called in. The dispatch center called us and now dispatched us to the scene. Yeah, and so that's how we got to know what happened. And normally this happens when someone has seen an accident has taken place, so they call, and then now from where we are called in.
Right. And of course the casualty is your number one priority.
My casualty is my number one priority. Yes.
So when you take the vitals, what are some of the things that you look out for?
Now I check the level of oxygen, I also check the pulse rate, which of course my monitor is going to the case that probably may need to put some fluids on the casualty, or am I dealing with a case that may not necessarily need the fluids, but I need just to manage the casualty on the ambulance. Yes. Also the same is going to detect if I need also to transfer this casualty to a nearby hospital.
Okay. Yes. Now already we know this is not just any car, this is a special car. Yes. You're seeing a lot of cabinets are here, I'm seeing there are fluids, there's so much happening here. If you could just tell us, what are some of the things that you need to have in an emergency vehicle?
Good. One of the things that is very key in an emergency vehicle, of course, is to have a monitor. And also you need to have a vent which is on standby. A vent meaning if you have to have your casualty who needs to have some special to get some more oxygen, being assisted by a ventilator, then you need to have it on board with you. Okay. Then of course you'll have the vital equipments, the thermometer. You'll have the BPs, the BP cuff, the BP cuff. You also need to have the RBS, these are the gadget that we check for RBS, which actually we have to do for her just to know her level of sugars. Because sometimes when a casualty probably has bled a lot, sometimes they tend to, either the sugars could be low or also could be high. So you also need to have this with us. That aside, you need to have the fluids. The common fluids that we normally have in an ambulance is normal saline, which looks something like this.
Okay.
Yes, this is normal saline or sodium chloride injection, and also we have what we call the Ringer's lactate, and each fluid is used for different cases. You don't just use all of them. So we also have the Ringer's lactate. We have what we call the D5. This is dextrose or glucose. Now for the D5, what does it do? This one helps now in case maybe the blood sugars are quite low, then it helps to bring the sugars back up, especially when you're giving the fluids. That aside, you also have the giving sets, what now you use to give the fluids to the casualty.
Right.
Now that's for use. Yes, yeah.
Godfrey, one would be very curious to know, of course, this specialized vehicle needs authorization in order for people to do this particular business. What are some of the things that people need to look out for when they need to partake in this business?
One, it's important to have staff that are qualified. It's very key. Yeah, those that have gone through the EMS, that's the emergency medical service training, have been trained to attend to casualties. Why I'm saying so, because you may not have, because like you saw, when you're getting a patient from the ground, you need to handle that patient with a lot of care. So if you have people who've not been qualified, then that can also cause more harm to the casualty. So that's number one. Number two, you need to have, if you are the ones, I'm talking of now the person who is operating, which people call a driver, but it's not a driver, it's an operator. Okay. Because at the front of the vehicle, it has some other gadgets. Okay. Yeah, which actually goes to the siren, the lighting, and all those other things. And whoever is operating that vehicle has to be trained on defensive driving, yeah, and also has to be trained on how to handle a casualty, because they're the ones whom you work hand in hand together with them. Yes, so that's very key. That's very key. Then the other thing is that you need to have a dispatch center that is functional. In other words, it's in operation. And whoever is actually at the dispatch center has to have some, or rather to have some medical knowledge of whatever case that they are getting from any call that comes in. Why? Because from a dispatch center, he or she is able to arrest or attend to that patient or casualty at that point of need before the ambulance arrives. Okay? So that now in case of maybe it's at home and someone has gotten an issue, probably something to do with they're not breathing very well. So then they've called the dispatch center. Whoever is actually communicating to them is able to attend to that person before now the ambulance arrives. Yes. Right.
Now, Godfrey, you've told me that there are things that you already have, but then a person who wants to start this as a business might be wondering, what are the bare, minimum that I should be having in order to ensure that I keep this patient alive until they get to the hospital? What are the 3 to 5 essential steps that they must take as they start it?
Well, in terms, of course, I've talked about the training.
Yes,
then, of course, it also goes hand in hand with now the equipment that are on board. Yeah, the fluids, the needles. We also need anything to do with airway. You need to have it on board. You also need to have things to do with now the monitors. I told you. Yeah, and if I told you to think in terms of the costing. Yeah, to have a fully functional operating ambulance, at least between 3.5 to 5 million, then you have a fully operational ambulance.
Right. And finally, when you're starting this business as an individual, you must think about the number of staff that you must have in an ambulance such as this one. How many staff does one need? How many shifts do they need, especially, during a normal working day?
If you have one ambulance, at least per ambulance, you need to have at least 4 staffs. 4 staff, I mean, you need to have 2 who are operating the ambulance and 2 who are actually the cabin, the ones that are now attending to the patient. Why I'm saying so that they can have a room to exchange shifts, depending on how you've arranged your ambulances, your shifts. The shift can go between either a 12-hour shift or a 24-hour shift. Yes, at least 4.
Right. And to the Kenyans who are watching this right now, a lot of people don't know that this is a business as well. They don't know that you can be giving emergency services. Yeah. If you could just give them, tips, what should they be looking out for? How should they be going into this particular business?
One, if you're thinking of doing this as a business, you need to think in terms of, like I said about training, have staff that are well trained. Well trained meaning you have EMTs or paramedics. And operators. Operators are those that we call drivers. Yeah, so you need to have those. Then again, if you're also thinking of this business, of course, cost has to be involved. Then also for your particular vehicle, it has to have a good space, a good at least standing space. Because sometimes you might be attending to a patient, like for example, if I need to do CPR on this patient, I cannot do a CPR while seated.
Right.
I have to be at least on a standing position. So you need to also think at least a high roof kind of an ambulance whereby you're able to stand and be a little bit comfortable. Yeah. And then of course now the equipment that you may need, like the spine board, the stretchers, and the rest that I actually mentioned earlier. So all this you need to put in place. Yes. Oh, and then also it's key and important to have you registered, because of course the county government need to know that you have an ambulance, yeah, and they'll do an inspection. Besides that, when now you are now in full-fledged operation, if you are in connection with a certain dispatch center, they need to be done for an inspection. Inspection meaning everything that is in this ambulance has to be, that you've been told, because now with the dispatch centers, they give you a list of items that you need to have in your ambulance. So that means when you go for an inspection, when you take your ambulance to be inspected, it has to have every item that has been itemized for it now to be qualified to now go out and help the people out there.
All right, thank you so much, Godfrey. This was, it was very practical and hands-on. This is something that a lot of people need to learn. And as we are learning this, we will be going to, of course, the owner of the business. We need to know how exactly they come up with this idea, how exactly they have been faring on. This business has been in existence for more than 5 years, right? It has been 5 years. Congratulations. We go for a very short break. When we come back, our expert of the week.
In a world where challenges are as common as opportunities, there are those who dare to defy the odds. They are the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship isn't just about starting a business, it's about embracing uncertainty, pushing boundaries, and turning dreams into reality.
Hata ambao ni pesa ya kusave, wallahi. Ambao mwaka ni pesa nyingi sana.
As long as you're earning something, there's always that opportunity to save. And you start with where you are.
The way we run the business is in a very unforgiving way, where every team member has to bring out their best.
So, to all the dreamers, innovators, and risk takers out there, remember, being an entrepreneur isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Join the journey. Become an entrepreneur. The Grind, Mondays at 7:30 p.m.
Here on Beyond the Limit, we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of
And welcome back to The Grind. My name is Hibak Saeed. This week we have been concentrating on emergency service providers. The private sector is going into this. How exactly does someone come into this business? People are very curious, Martin. Maybe you can start by introducing yourself. What is your name? How exactly did you go into this business?
Thank you for having me, and welcome to Oko Ambulance. My name is Martin Shira, and I run Oko Ambulance as in charge of operations.
All right.
Yeah, Okoa is basically Okoa is a name Okoa is a connotation of our city, our ambulance.
Very creative.
Okoa is we have run Okoa from April of 2019, and so basically for 5 years, 1 month.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, we are a private ambulance, and we serve communities and people around us.
All right, Martin. Now it's been 5 years. When you were starting this business, it was at the advent of COVID-19. How exactly did your business either thrive or fall? Because we know that time was very tricky, especially for the healthcare sector.
Okay, we started the business before COVID. That was in 2019 April. COVID came in 2020 March. So it was quite challenging, because I can say we just started off in 2019 when we were just about picking up. COVID came, we didn't know what this thing was, and it was quite scary. Actually, we were even thinking of leaving out the business and getting out of business, because something has come, you don't know how to handle it. No one knew. We tried to look for solutions. basic things got so expensive, so the business became so expensive to run. Okay, there was a lot of business because people needed to move around with ambulances, but for us, it was not business.
You have been in this for 5 years. One would even say you're an expert right now. I'm sure you've been through very different phases. Quite recently, there was the strike by the doctors. How exactly have you been handling that?
It's also another big challenge since the public sector. The public sector is in our health industry. The public hospitals take a great chunk of patients, and so where the challenge, you take someone in an ambulance and you don't know where to take, because in the hospitals, the referral hospitals are full. The small private hospitals are full. People don't have money to pay for services, all that. So it's been a challenge.
You're a health service provider, give or take. How exactly do you get your clientele? How do you connect with people? How do they get to know that you offer these services?
We have a dispatch. We have a dispatch, and we have a dispatch line 0758 692 000. We are everywhere. We talk to hospitals. We have people at home. We've gone a lot around sensitizing people about the need for ambulances at home. Emergency situations like road traffic accidents, in workplaces, occupational health, and so we have done a lot of sensitization. Have visited each and every corner of this country, this city, trying to explain to people the need for ambulances. So those people have our numbers. So in case of anything, they'll just call us, including the public. We go around teaching people and instilling first aid skills. So with these people, keep our number, because you never know when you need an ambulance. And also, it's not about you when you need, because mostly when you need an ambulance, you'll not be in a position to call it yourself. Right. It's about the other person having a number that they can call in case of anything, any medical eventuality. Yeah.
All right. Now, this, as any other business, of course, has competitors. You do have your competition. For a person who's looking to go into this business, who are the competitors and how can they have an edge against them?
Our competition, I can say our competition is Uber, personal cars, and bystanders.
Right.
Why? Because mostly when people are in an emergency situation, they want to use an Uber other than an ambulance. They want to call an Uber. Calling about Uber, this taxi hailing, they want to call a taxi to take someone to hospital, and without considering the patient. So it's their convenience. So they call an Uber without considering the patient. Secondly, the bystanders. The bystanders want to just lift someone, put them in a car, just a vehicle anyhow, and move them. So we go around at least and sensitize people on the need to call qualified and professional medical emergency services to your location in case of accidents in the house, then you know, everywhere.
I can see that you have a number of cars here. And before you get to this amount of cars, this is a very delicate business. You need to have your paperwork. And you've been doing this for a while now. What paperwork is required? Where could people get this paperwork? Who needs to give you authorization?
For that one now, you get to Ministry of Health, Kenya. We have like Kenya Council of Emergency Technicians. Those are the people who accredit the emergency medical technicians who work in these ambulances. And
when you go away from the paperwork, there's of course the money aspect. Yeah. Would you say that, first of all, the initial cost, kind of what is the turnaround time so that you can, break even at some point? Would you profitize enough to run this business solely?
I can say it's quite expensive. For an ambulance to be an ambulance, a good ambulance that at least can take care of any emergency, you need at least 6 million to 7 million. It takes some time for you to break even. It's also very expensive to run these, being a professional. a professional service. It's very expensive to run an ambulance service since you need the EMTs, the paramedics who are professionals. These people are always at work waiting at any given time. These people will not come from home to come and respond to an emergency. They are always at work. So they are being paid whether there is an emergency or not. So it's quite an expensive venture. But thank God we're here. We've managed to structure things on our operational structures and enable us to at least stay afloat.
And finally, Martin, of course, there is a future for any particular sector, but this is a special sector. Where do you see the future of this venture?
Far. I always envision an Okoa with a helicopter, a Cessna for emergency evacuations in Turkana, or an air ambulance. Moving forward, we also we've partnered with an insurance company, where we've come up with a product, an evacuation product called Okoa Maisha. This is for people who you see accidents happen. You're not prepared for an accident. Let's say you have an accident, you are in an accident, you need an ambulance. You don't have money in your pocket. And this is a private ambulance where you need to pay. So you subscribe to this cover. In case of an accident, you call the ambulance, we respond, pick you, take you to hospital, and take care of you. Probably the hospital need ask for probably a deposit so that they can serve you. We have 100,000 shillings for you within the same cover. There is an air evacuation, one air evacuation per year worth 500,000 shillings. So you should not worry when you get an emergency in Turkana. You are well covered. In case and this can happen, you die, we'll have 50,000 for you and family, for a decent burial. So we have partnered with G Insurance, and we are really now trying to move the product so that everyone can be able to afford an ambulance. Ambulance should not just be left for people with money. And this cover costs 3,650. Basically, at 10 shillings a day, you should be able to have an ambulance evacuation, 2 ambulance evacuations in a year. We should be able to have an air evacuation, 1 air evacuation, 100,000 shillings medical cover. Accidental medical cover, and there's a last expense of 50,000, and what we will train you first aid.
Right, and it's very important for people. Emergency healthcare should be accessible to all individuals, but as a business, you've said slow and steady is the pace that one should go. Of course, you should be planning, but you're just not going to be successful overnight. It's a process. Are you willing to go through the process? This has been the sector we were focusing on this particular week. Of course, next week we'll have something more exciting as the grind grows. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Until next week, same time, same place. My name is Hibak Saeed. Have yourselves a very lovely night.